he returned and purchased another one, and then a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. Within just 5 months, Mr. Minor bought 25 handguns from the same gun store. Indeed, he purchased 8 handguns within the span of just 2 weeks. Mr. Minor did the same thing at 2 other gun stores in Montgomery County, Maryland, Atlantic Guns and United Gun Shop. In total, he ended up purchasing 34 guns over the course of just a few months. Guns he did not intend to keep. One person, 34 guns, less than 6 months. There's a term for this kind of behavior. It's called straw purchasing. It's where one person buys guns with the intent of trafficking them, selling or transferring them to other people who are legally prohibited from having them. Straw purchasing is illegal, and so is straw selling. Straw selling guns to purchasers like Mr. Minor, who intend to traffic those guns, is a particularly pernicious practice here in the DMV. Here in Washington, D.C., 95% of illegal guns come from outside the district. These are the illegal guns that are fueling the deadly, horrific gun violence that has wreaked havoc on so many of our neighbors and so many of our neighborhoods. As was predictable and foreseeable, Mr. Minor turned around and trafficked the guns he purchased from these 3 Maryland gun stores. And not surprisingly, many of those guns became crime guns, guns recovered at crime scenes in the district and in Maryland. Now, these 3 gun stores that we've named as defendants are federal firearms licensees, or FFLs. As federal licensees, they are permitted to sell guns. They are trained and have a legal duty to watch out for straw purchasers like Mr. Minor. And they are required to refuse to sell guns to straw purchasers. It doesn't take a lot of common sense to figure out that someone trying to repeatedly buy the same semi-automatic handgun over a short period of time is a straw purchaser and is buying the guns for illegal purposes. And yet, all 3 of these stores ignored the red flags and instead chose to sell guns to Mr. Minor anyway. They made a choice to put their profits over our public safety, a choice to put their profits over our people. Now, Mr. Minor paid for his crimes. He was prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced right here in this federal court. But the source of the illegal guns, the gun sellers who supplied Mr. Minor, have not been held accountable. As the sentencing judge in Mr. Minor's case, Judge Mehta, observed, it is too often the case that the true drivers of gun trafficking, the distributors, the dealers who supply guns into the illegal secondary market, those entities escape consequence and accountability. That is why my office, alongside the Maryland Attorney General's office and Everytown Law, have sued the 3 gun shops today. We're holding them accountable, responsible for violating federal law and Maryland law when they repeatedly and knowingly sold dangerous handguns to a person they knew or should have known was trafficking those guns. We're going to hold them accountable for the role they played in facilitating illegal gun trafficking, and we're going to expose the role gun dealers play in fueling gun violence here and across the country. Gun violence is a regional problem. It requires a regional solution. That's why I've partnered with A.G. Brown and Everytown in bringing this lawsuit. Strong gun laws don't matter if gun dealers don't follow them. They don't work if gun dealers that are supplying guns choose to flout the law in order to pump the volume of their sales. As I mentioned, 95% of illegal guns recovered here in D.C. came from outside of D.C. 95%. And the vast majority of those guns have been trafficked by straw purchasers. Our borders are porous. Guns purchased in Maryland and Virginia and other states end up on our streets, used in crimes which devastate the lives of our residents, disrupting our community. 9 of the 34 guns sold to Mr. Minor have already been recovered as crime guns by MPD and by Maryland law enforcement. The rest remain unaccounted for. The Office of Attorney General here in the District of Columbia, my office is committed to doing everything we can to address and drive down the unacceptable level of gun violence in the District of Columbia. And while the numbers this year are trending in the right direction, one gun crime is one too many. There is still so much work to be done. We will continue to prosecute juvenile crime, including every case involving a gun where there's enough evidence to do so. We will continue to make sure that youth who cause harm face consequences for their actions, while also helping and to make sure they get the resources they need so that they don't reoffend. We will continue to defend the district's common sense gun laws against legal challenge. We will continue to prosecute the district's red flag laws, seeking extreme risk protective orders, or ERPOs, to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. We'll continue to go after ghost gun manufacturers who seek to peddle gun kits online. And we will continue to fund grants to community-based organizations that are doing the hard work every day on the ground to reduce violence in our communities. But effective policing and prosecution, while critical parts of any comprehensive strategy, are not enough. We can't effectively address gun crime without addressing the guns themselves. Our city is being flooded with illegal weapons. Gun recoveries in D.C. over the last decade have gone up 130%. We need to do more than just chase the guns once they've already been trafficked here. We need to get to the source. We need to get to the suppliers. We need to stop guns from getting into the district in the first place. We can't keep asking the back end to deal with gun violence when it's people at the front end, the distributors, who in pursuit of profits are driving violence. We need to not only put a stop to their illegal conduct, but we're going to hit them where it hurts them most, in their wallets. I'm proud to join with Attorney General Brown in Everytown to try to address the regional scourge of gun violence. Together, we intend to hold accountable those at the source of the gun violence epidemic, gun dealers who choose to prioritize their profits over the public safety. I want to thank the attorneys in my office, the attorneys at the Maryland Office of Attorney General and at Everytown for their tremendous hard work and dedication in putting together this detailed complaint. A complaint that details the defendant's blatant disregard of the law and their clear, gross, and unacceptable negligence. And now I'll turn it over to my counterpart from Maryland, Attorney General Anthony Brown.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, General Schwab. It's certainly an honor to be here with you today and your team, as well as Everytown, in this important interjurisdictional partnership and effort to address gun violence and the proliferation of guns on our streets, in our communities, in the national capital region. So I want to thank you, Attorney General Schwab, and your office for partnering with the Maryland Office of the Attorney General in bringing this important lawsuit. We've recently partnered, as General Schwab mentioned, with Everytown Law. I want to thank Eric Tershwell and his team. We're excited about the progress that they're making in communities across the country in bringing these suits and promoting common sense gun laws. This case certainly shows the power of working together to protect our communities. And talking or speaking of communities, I want to thank Ryan Nickens. I want to thank you and the Trayron Center, the work that you do in breaking the cycle of violence, working with young people who are healing and recovering and have suffered from gun violence in their communities and their families. So thank you very much as well to all of the advocates. This case sends a clear message to those who disregard the law. We'll go wherever necessary to hold you accountable for putting our communities at risk. Many of us have watched the news and we wonder where are all these guns coming from? Well, today we have part of the answer and we're taking serious action. I'm proud to bring this lawsuit on behalf of Maryland in partnership with the District of Columbia. This joint action shows our commitment to holding gun dealers accountable when they don't follow the law. Regardless of where you stand in the gun debate, we can all agree that people who aren't legally allowed to have firearms shouldn't get them. Straw gun sales, as you heard, where someone buys a gun for someone who can't legally own one, those transactions are illegal. And gun shop owners have a responsibility to enforce the law. These illegal sales fuel gun violence across state lines. And as Attorney General Schwab detailed in his remarks, that's exactly what happened here. Federal records show a pattern of illegal activity involving 3 gun stores in Rockville, Maryland, which sold firearms to Demetrius Minor. These stores repeatedly sold large quantities of similar handguns over short periods of time. That should have been a clear warning of straw purchases. By ignoring these signals and signs, these red flags, these stores contributed to illegal gun trafficking. As a result, guns ended up in the hands of people who aren't allowed to have them. A report from my office identified these stores as the top 3 retailers of crime guns recovered in Maryland from August 2020 to July 2021. Clearly, these stores played a role in supplying firearms used in crimes across our region. I want to thank local law enforcement for their work in uncovering and recovering many of these guns. Law enforcement spends valuable time and resources dealing with the consequences of firearms getting into the wrong hands, often leading to tragic outcomes. Gun violence inflicts grief, pain, and trauma on our communities. Families are devastated, lives are lost, and innocent people are harmed. Maryland dedicates significant resources to both preventing gun violence and dealing with its aftermath, including the costs of health care, emergency services, social services, incarceration, law enforcement, lost tax revenues, and of course, lost lives. My office takes pride in curbing firearm crime, preventing access to firearms by prohibited persons, and protecting public safety. While today's announcement is a first for Maryland and the District of Columbia, certainly first for General Schwab and my office, just last week we announced indictments in Maryland against 4 defendants accused of stealing guns from gun stores and trafficking them in our communities. Neither this case nor last week's infringes on the Second Amendment or the rights of law-abiding citizens to purchase firearms lawfully. This case is about protecting the public and ensuring that licensed gun dealers follow the law. No one should ever have to fear for their safety or the safety of loved ones in this region. You should be able to go to school, shop, enjoy parks, and live in peace without fear. My hope is that every Marylander and resident of the District of Columbia can sleep easier tonight knowing that action is being taken. I'd like to thank, again, my office and members of my team, and I'm proud to work alongside General Schwab and his team as we work together to tackle gun violence and that epidemic that is plaguing our communities and our region. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric from Everytown.
Thank you very much, A.G. Brown and A.G. Schwab. My name is Eric Tershwell. I'm the Executive Director and Chief Litigation Counsel at Everytown Law. Everytown is proud to be partnering with the Attorney Generals of the District of Columbia and Maryland in this important case to address interstate gun trafficking. As far as we're aware, this is the first time that two neighboring attorney generals have come together to bring a case like this. And we know how important that is because gun trafficking does not stop at state lines. As alleged in today's complaint, 3 Rockville, Maryland gun stores put profits over public safety by facilitating the illegal distribution of firearms in the DC metropolitan area. The results have been regrettable but predictable. First, most of these firearms were transferred to a district resident with a lengthy and violent criminal history. That's Mr. Willis, who was mentioned earlier. Second, too many of these guns have already been recovered in connection with crimes in Washington, D.C. and in Maryland. And you can see that on this map, which I believe is, over here. These are the locations of many of the recoveries of the guns involved in this trafficking ring that we are taking action on today. And I want to give you a few examples of some of these recoveries. This is all laid out in the lawsuit that was filed earlier this morning. One of the guns sold by these stores was used by Mr. Willis to terrorize partygoers at a house in the District of Columbia, including by pointing the gun at partygoers' heads. Another gun was found in Prince George's County in the possession of a suspect in a stabbing. A third was recovered in the district from a fugitive with an active warrant for assault. 2 others were recovered along with illegal large-capacity magazines and illegal narcotics. Many more are still out on the street and unaccounted for. Now, as we also explain in today's filing, and as you've heard, federally licensed gun stores like these 3 Maryland retailers are well aware of the indicators of straw purchasing. Those indicators include bulk purchases and repeated purchases of the same or similar guns in a relatively short period of time. And that's exactly what we have in this case. As you can see from the second chart here, the defendants repeatedly sold numerous similar handguns to a single straw purchaser in a short period of time, sometimes multiple guns on the same day. Now, as you've heard, both Mr. Minor, the straw purchaser, and Mr. Willis, who he sold many of the guns to, were both prosecuted and sent to prison. But as the attorneys general both emphasized, that is not enough. And that is why we are here today. We need to cut off the suppliers of crime guns in addition to punishing the purchasers. As the federal judge who presided over Mr. Minor's sentencing in this courthouse observed, and I'm quoting now, "What sense does it make that a gun shop can sell 25 plus weapons to someone without incurring any consequence?" That was Judge Maida in this courthouse. Today is the beginning of these stores incurring those consequences. The remedies we're seeking include injunctive relief to make sure the stores stop facilitating illegal gun sales, as well as funds to abate the public nuisance that their actions have contributed to. So let me end by noting this is not the first time Everytown Law has teamed up with state and local officials to address and seek accountability from bad apple gun stores, and it will not be the last. This lawsuit should serve as a warning to any other gun store that believes that it can profit off of illegal straw sales. You are not immune from being sued. And if you are putting the safety of the public at risk, if you turn a blind eye to illegal purchases, if you are helping to fuel gun trafficking, you will have to answer for your actions in court. I want to thank all the attorneys in the DC Attorney General's office, the Maryland Attorney General's office, my colleagues at Everytown Law for putting this case together. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Nickens, president of the Trayron Center.
Good morning. Thank you to both Attorney Generals Schwab and Brown and to Eric for all that they're doing in their offices to curtail illegal guns from flowing into our city and killing our family members and community members. My name is Ryan Nickens. I am a native Washingtonian. I grew up east of the river and in this city that I love because I love my city. My city has not always loved me back. And in 1989 was the first time my family was impacted by guns. My Uncle David, on January the 27th, 1989, was walking from my grandmother's house to my aunt's house. And on 22nd Street in Southeast, he was killed. He was not the intended target, he just happened to look like someone. But that did not stop the pain. That did not provide for us some kind of relief to our grief because my uncle was dead and his daughter was left without a father figure in her life. My family would not be able to grieve my uncle when my next door neighbor shot and killed my sister Tracy in 1993. And then in 1996, my brother Ronnie was killed. In between that, there were the neighbors. There was, as a teenager, ducking drive-bys. As a teenager, looking at the seat beside me and knowing my classmate should be there. But prematurely, because of the illegal gun flow into our communities, that classmate was no longer there. And their dreams and their family's dreams for them were killed because of an illegal gun. And so fast forward, 30 years later, we still have an illegal guns problem that is taking the lives of our loved ones. It is the reason I founded the Trayron Center, an organization that works with children 4 to 14 who live in communities where intergenerational gun violence is happening and has continued to happen, and there are no resources, there are no mental health and trauma resources for our kids. And so they are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders at 4 and 5. I'll share with you this story. When we first started our summer camp in 2018 in our after-school program, there was a shootout in the Woodland Langston Lane community. I held on to one of our babies, who was 8 at the time, as she cried unconsolably, wondering if she was the next person to die. She did not want to leave the center. And so we stayed there for about 40 minutes until she was comfortable, until she was ready. Our kids used to bring stray bullets to the center to show me, Miss Ryan, look what I found outside. Like, this is what kids in communities like Langston Lane, Benton Terrace, and others around our city are living through. And so what the Attorney General are doing is a welcome, and I thank you both, because when Attorney General Schwab began to run for office, we sat down and we talked. We talked about the solutions to how do we curb violence and bring down violence. And I said to you, when are we going to go after the gun manufacturers and the gun stores? Because behind that trigger is not just the person pulling the trigger, but it's the gun stores and who they bought these guns for. It's a whole system that has been set up for that person to fill, and that person holds accountability for their actions. I'm not saying they don't, but they hold accountability for their actions. But so do gun stores who sell guns illegally. and so do others who sell guns illegally. And so this is a welcome for me and our communities and the children that we serve, that this is a positive step forward. And I am thankful to both Attorney Generals and Everytown for what they continue to do to make our communities safer as we continue to make those of us in the grassroots gun violence group continue to make our community safer with all of us, because it takes an all-out effort to make our community safer. This is nothing new. This is 4 decades of gun violence, 5 decades of gun violence in the District of Columbia. And at some point, it has to stop. And it takes brave people like those you see around you and the attorney generals to step up and step to the bully and bring the fight to the bully so that we can grocery shop. Our kids can play outside. That our kids can, on their way to school, feel safe. Our kids don't have to walk through metal detectors and have police surrounding their schools. That they can grow up to be everything that God has created them to be and everything they hope to be without post-traumatic syndrome, without PSTD, without looking back 30 years over their lives and remembering every bad thing, the bullets that came through their windows, the heartache of losing so many family members and friends, seeing bodies ridden with bullets at tender ages of 4 and 5. Who wants those kind of childhood memories? Who wants to go to bed to gunfire at night wondering if it's your loved one, if it's your family member, if it's your friend, and if you're next? And so again, thank you to both Attorney Generals and to Eric and to all of those in the violence interruption world doing this work and giving of themselves and their families day and night. It's all hands on deck now, and it is a team effort, and we see the numbers trending down in the District of Columbia, and it's because it's a team effort and because our Attorney General is bold enough to stick to his word and to do the work. Thank you.
All right, folks, we're gonna do some questions. We're also gonna switch mics real quick. Take a second to do that. So, I'm gonna call on folks. If you can say your name and your outlet. We're gonna do one question at a time, and if you have additional questions, we'll circle back. How's that, Mike? Bush, we good? Yep. All right. Yes.
I'm going to let Mr. Tershwell get into some of the details, but the high-level objective is, most importantly, to stop the conduct, to put an end to selling to straw purchasers, and put an end to the practice. That can involve both injunctive relief as well as monitors to make sure that that doesn't happen. We most certainly are also seeking damages and penalties against these dealers for the havoc and the damages they've caused, as A.G. Brown laid out. Tremendous cost to our communities in terms of response costs, in terms of lost economics and jobs, and that's before you get to the impact on people's lives and the fear factor and the trauma that people experience.
Let me just say one thing. And let me just add too, I mean, it's not just United Atlantic and Engage. They are the defendants in this case. But as we've all sort of expressed, this is sending a clear message. We will disrupt your business model if that includes engaging in straw purchases. So yes, it's an injunctive relief, stop doing what you're doing. It's monetary penalties, and where we can, we'll seek punitive damages. And the goal is to disrupt and discontinue this for these defendants and to send a signal to all gun store owners in the DMV that if this is what you do, this is what we do, and we're going to disrupt and discontinue what you do.
Let's go right here. Yeah.
William Poole, Maryland Matter. Attorney General Brown, real quick, please, sir.
Yeah.
Being that this is an interstate type of particular suit, are you looking, is your office looking to do some more and file some more of these type of suits?
Look, I've had very productive conversations with Brian Schwab, my colleague, the Attorney General here in the District of Columbia, and we're looking for any and every opportunity to partner. People who elect us in office expect public officials to work together, and that's true whether it's public safety, public health, addressing environmental issues. Today we're talking about public safety, and when we can join together, when our local law enforcement agencies like Metropolitan Police here in the District of Columbia, Maryland State Police, Prince George's Montgomery Police, when we can partner together and leverage our resources and do it with the nonprofit community like Everytown, then we're doing right by the people who elected us. We are going to contribute to safer communities throughout the metropolitan region.
Yes, name and outlet, please.
Dave LaValle with DC News Now, Attorney General Brown. Just to expand on this last question, got the federal charges. Are there any plans to seek state charges in Maryland?
Well, I'm going to let Everytown speak to the details of this complaint, but I do want to stay within the four corners of the complaint, which do allege violations of federal and Maryland state law. In terms of criminal punishment against these defendants or others, you know, I will point out last week, unrelated case, different fact pattern. You know, we indicted 4 young adults. In that case, they burglarized a gun store, but whether you're burglarizing a gun store or you're on the other end of the counter selling guns illegally, we're going to use all tools, civil, criminal, administrative, whatever it takes to protect our communities.
Let me just add, to be clear, this is a civil lawsuit filed this morning in state court in Maryland. It's filed in state court in Maryland because obviously these gun stores are located in Rockville, Maryland, and the claims that we're bringing, 5 different causes of action, are all state law causes of action. So that's the case that we brought. So you're right that the decision on their federal license is up to the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There are some allegations in the complaint about inspections of some of these stores, but as we all know, the ATF has limited resources. Their ability to inspect gun stores on a regular basis just doesn't really exist. So our experience has been when these cases are brought, it is often another opportunity for the ATF to take a closer look at these gun stores. That's certainly something we would expect here, and we may be urging the ATF to do. But in the case that we've brought, the remedies that we are able to seek under Maryland law and the district's law do not include taking away the license. They do include the kind of injunctive relief that A.G. Schwab was talking about and other monetary relief.
And just to clarify, the process of filing would perhaps trigger the ATF to take a closer look, or would a decision be what would cause the ATF to look closer?
That's really up to the ATF. Yeah, I can't speak to that. It's their discretion.
Well, I mean, you said this lawsuit may. I didn't know if in the past they've heard about it, looked at a shop or whatever, or waited till there was a decision.
Well, look, one thing that's worth pointing out is that a lot of the information in this lawsuit comes from a criminal case that the ATF itself initiated and resulted in the prosecution of Mr. Minor, the straw purchaser, and Mr. Willis, the violent felon to whom he sold many of these weapons. So the ATF has been aware of these patterns of gun sales for a long time. You'll have to ask them what, if any, steps they have taken or might take going forward. But this lawsuit shines a light on the lack of accountability, as Judge Maida, who sentenced Mr. Minor, pointed out, on the gun stores. And that's an important part of this case.
All right, Sam?
can speak for the District of Columbia that our investigation and the basis for the lawsuit that we filed today does not involve police involvement or police trafficking of guns. This is focused on private conduct. The businesses in Maryland making a decision to look past the red flags, to stick their head in the sand when there were obvious signs of straw purchasing going on repeatedly over a short period of time. This is focusing on private conduct of Maryland businesses violating both federal law and Maryland law in selling to straw purchasers.
But as far as future lawsuits or future investigations, this is the spirit of expanding and just hammering down on the illegal trafficking of guns. What are you finding as far as police officers involved?
As I've made clear, my office is interested in doing everything we can possibly do to address the scourge of gun violence. And to the extent that there is anybody violating the law or disregarding the public trust or engaging in behavior that puts DC residents, DC visitors, DC employees at risk, we're going to use every tool we have at the Office of Attorney General to come after them.
Well, no, just he asked for a follow-up here. I mean, the same thing here. We're using every tool at our disposal, whether it's criminal penalties and using federal, state, and local law enforcement, whether what we're doing today, bringing civil actions. We're going to use every tool at our disposal to rid our communities of gun violence.
Yeah, hey. Quick question about one of the examples that was listed in the release. As you mentioned, a gun recovered in November 2022 from a DC hotel. I don't know if you're able to confirm if that's related to the shooting of a
Not able to confirm that.
Beatrice Peterson, ABC News. I know this is the first of its kind lawsuit with the two states, but one state that's missing that's nearby is Virginia. I was wondering if you guys have had any engagement with the Virginia AG as well as any conversations about these gun stores and their guns maybe being trafficked into Virginia.
Well, I can say that Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of Virginia, is somebody who both AG Brown and I have regular communication with. We are always looking for opportunities to collaborate and work together on issues that affect the DMV. Gun trafficking is one of those, environmental contamination, worker exploitation. There are a variety of issues that we are much more effective at addressing when we work together. And that's why this effort with both AG Brown and my office together is hopefully sending a strong signal, and we welcome AG Miyares and other regional AGs to joining us in this collective effort.
Brad Bell with Channel 7. Can you make a question here on Fear of the Streets and Mr. Robinson, or will you do it separately?
Sorry, Brad, we're going to do on topics first, and then we can circle back. Yes. Mauricio Casillas with NBC4. Is there an example nationwide where there's been successful civil lawsuits against these gun stores for these sorts of violations, and can you speak to that, give an example?
Yes, there are a number of examples, some recent, some older. We at Everytown have been involved in lawsuits against gun stores that are supplying crime guns to cities in Kansas City, Missouri, in Chicago, in Philadelphia. The Kansas City case is the only one that is concluded, and that resulted in one of the gun stores having a monitor, which A.G. Schwab mentioned, in place, to revamping their policies and procedures and training to really try to make sure that this type of straw selling and trafficking is shut down. The case we brought in Chicago against an Indiana gun dealer that was the source of hundreds of crime guns recovered in the city of Chicago eventually led to that gun store shutting down in the face of regulatory and litigation pressure. And then if you go back a few years, the city of New York brought many cases against out-of-state gun dealers that also resulted in the installation of monitors and other remedies. And there actually is some follow-up social science that shows, as you would expect, that the number of recoveries of guns sold by those stores significantly dropped. So the short of it is, yes, there is precedent and there is success to be pointed to from this type of lawsuit.
On topic. Shouldn't the Maryland State Police have intercepted these sales? I mean, that's my question, Attorney General. Shouldn't the Maryland State Police have intercepted these sales with the number?
Well, Brad, I'm not going to speculate in should have, could have. Okay, I'm going to stay on where we are right now. They were There were illegal straw purchases that were made. Many of them, not all of them, were recovered. The Demetrius minor was prosecuted for that, and our role today is speak to the responsibility of the gun stores and what they failed to do.
Sorry, just to add to that, I just wanted to point out, and this is quoted in our complaint, this lawsuit focuses on the gun stores, as the ATF says, as the gun industry itself acknowledges, the gun stores are the front line and the first line of defense against illegal trafficking and illegal gun sales. That is where this case is focused, and that is where we should be focused right now.